around next lecture, we're talking very briefly, because we have stuff to do today, about what are the roles of each speech in parliamentary debate. And so first off, we're going to start by naming each speech. And the names of each speech in parli are the PMC, the LOC, the MGC, the MOC, the LOR, and of course, the PMR. I'm going to draw brackets here, and I'm going to draw brackets here. Okay, what do each of those stand for? The first speaker on the affirmative team is called the Prime Minister. So the PMC is the Prime Minister's constructive. If you took my debate class, you know that there are constructive speeches and rebuttal speeches in debate. And when we say that, what we mean is, in constructive speeches, you're allowed to make new arguments. You're allowed to introduce things for the first time. But in rebuttal speeches, you're not allowed to make new arguments unless a new argument was made in the speech before yours. So for example, let's say this person, they're allowed to make new arguments, right? Because that has a C in it, the MOC. Well, the AF doesn't get a speech until much later, right? So any new argument in this speech, this person is allowed to respond to, even though it's a rebuttal. Why? Because if they weren't allowed to respond to new arguments, they would lose the debate and that'd be stupid. So the PMC is the Prime Minister's constructive. The LOC is the Leader of Opposition's constructive. The MGC is the Member of Government's constructive. The MOC is the Member of Opposition's constructive. What do you think the LOR is?
Leader of Opposition response?
Rebuttal.
Rebuttal.
Leader of Opposition rebuttal, what's PMR? Prime Minister's rebuttal. Okay? So the first four speeches in the debate are constructives where new arguments are allowed. The last two speeches are rebuttals where new arguments are not allowed. So Christina asked a very good question, which is like, what am I supposed to do in all these speeches? Like, what's going on? So let's break that down. This one's obvious. What do you think you do in the PMC? There's only one thing you can't do, right? You read the AF. The PMC, for sure, is like the easiest speech to do. You just read a script. You don't have to answer anyone's arguments because no one made any arguments. We used to do practice rounds sometimes at Pacific when we wanted to save time, where just no one would read the PMC. Like we just give the PMC to them like during prep so that they knew what it was, and then we just started the debate that. Save ourselves 7 minutes. Oh, I should also put the times here. Sorry, 7, 8, 8, 8, 4, 5. That's how many minutes you get for each of these speeches. Great. LOC. The LOC does two things. Reads the name, answers the AF. Makes sense, right? First speech, AF reads the AF. Second speech, neg reads the neg, and then needs to spend some time answering what the AF said. Why does this speech need to answer what the AF said? What have we learned that tells us you better do that or you're going to lose the debate automatically? What happens if you don't answer an argument?
It's true.
Say that.
It's automatically accepted.
It's accepted as true, essentially. So if you don't answer the AF, you just lost the debate because their whole AF is true for the rest of the debate. There's no shot you can win. Right? Like essentially, unless they're just really bad and their AF is awful and like makes no sense, like, great. Okay. What does the MGC do? Any guesses based on this pattern so far? Well, do they have news? Do they have like a whole new speech to read? Like, do we have a secret second AF or something like that? No. So what do you think they're going to do? The neg. So the first thing they do is answer neg. And the second thing they do, and this is it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order, but it is these two things, is extend the AF. What When I say extend the act, what I mean is, we just talked about this. If you don't have an argument in a speech, it doesn't exist anymore. So if you don't extend arguments from your case, even though your partner read them, even if they weren't answered, they just disappeared from the debate. There's a word for that in debate. It's called a shadow extension. A shadow extension would be like, I make an argument here, my partner does not extend it here, and then in the PMR I go, remember that argument I made earlier? It's like, no, I don't, because your partner didn't make it. It's in the shadows. Okay? There is a bracket drawn around these two speeches. This is what we call the negative block. And that is because the negative gets two speeches back to back. So they get a total of 12 minutes, which is followed by a 5-minute affirmative speech. That's what makes the last speech so hard. So the app is the easiest, like PMC, easiest speech in the debate, hardest speech in the debate, kind of, right? Like it averages. So what's the MOC? MOC number one priority, they collapse. They answer, and then we'll put in parentheses, because this is a maybe, they waive. I'll explain what I mean by all those terms. There's something unique about the MO when you look at this diagram, okay? What are there no more of after the MO? There are no more constructives. What does that mean? What are there no more of?
You can't add new arguments.
There are no new arguments coming after the MO. So what does that make special about the MO? It's the first moment in the debate where someone knows every single argument that will ever be introduced in this debate. There will be nothing new. All of the sort of like, Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever have been placed on the board. Okay? All the pieces have been laid out. They're the first person who knows that though. And therefore, it is their job to be the person who picks which arguments are they going to go for to win them the debate. And we call this process collapsing. When I say collapsing, I mean, number one, getting rid of the argument you are not going for, and number two, hyper-focusing on the one you are going for. Were any of you here yesterday? I don't even remember. Were literally any of you debaters here yesterday? No? Great. We had a debate yesterday that I was in, and Ruth was in, and we had two advantages. Tristan and Garrett had two disadvantages. And so it was Ruth giving the last speech here, and the question was, are you going for advantage 1, or are you going for advantage 2? Because we were the act. But if we were the negative, are you going for the disadvantage 1 or disadvantage 2? The MO, because they know there's nothing new coming, their job is to figure out the puzzle. Based on everything that's been presented in front of me, what do I go for to win? Why should they collapse? What is the benefit of getting rid of your other position and going for just one? It's a tough question.
If you feel like you're being beaten on that other argument, you might abandon
100%. If that argument is a lost cause, why are you going to spend more time on it? But there's another thing that's related to this and this. What do you think makes this speech really hard?
Trying to defend
What are you trying to defend?
that collapse.
Yeah, so like, look at this. That collapse is only one of the speeches. The PMR has 5 minutes to beat back 12 straight minutes of the other team's arguments. You want to know how you make that impossible for them, basically? Make it unbelievably hard? Instead of you spending, 8 minutes in a speech? Instead of you spending 2 minutes on disadvantage 1, and 2 minutes on disadvantage 2, and 2 minutes on their advantage 1, and 2 minutes on their advantage 2, you spend 6 minutes on your disadvantage 1, 1 minute on their 2 positions. So you have spent more time on that 1 position than the entire rest of the debate combined so far, essentially. And then guess what? Afterwards, your partner gets to do more. Okay? So the MO collapses because it forces a time trade-off. You get rid of your weakest argument that you probably weren't going to win anyway, and now you get to make your best argument even more deep, even more difficult for them to deal with. The hardest part when you're better, none of you are at this level yet, the hardest part when you're better is not having enough time to resolve everything you want to resolve. When you're new, it's the exact opposite. Your problem's going to be filling 8 minutes in the first place, right? But when you're really good, it's very important that you're time efficient. So we collapse and we answer. Obviously, we answer what the other team said. And then I said weigh. And when I say weigh, I mean that impact calculus, right? Start setting up. If you're going for disadvantage 1, why does disadvantage 1 matter more than their advantages? Now, important concept here. The MO knows every argument that will be in the debate, but do they know which argument the AF will go for? So they have to answer both. Do you get that? Because if you, like, let's pretend you're like, I dare them to go for advantage 1, so I'm only going to answer advantage 2. So great, then they're going to go for it and you're going to lose, right? The MO has to answer everything the AF said, so they need to spend as little time as possible on their own arguments by focusing in on just one of them. Great. We weigh that, we compare. We compare our disadvantage 1 to both their advantage 1 and their advantage 2 if we have time. This is in parentheses because it's the least important part of the speech. If it doesn't happen here, that's fine. Why is it fine? Because homie's going to do it over here for us, right? So in this speech, you have 2 jobs, and only 2 jobs. Preempt and weigh. Because if your partner did their job, that's all you should have left to do. What do I mean by preempt? What does that word mean, preempt? Christina, any guesses?
That's the road mapping thing.
No, that's a good guess. One more guess and then we're moving on.
Like a conclusion of everything?
What does it mean to, well, forget about in debate. What does it mean when I say, like, I'm going to preempt that? What does that mean?
To prepare, like, for something, preemptively do something.
Great. The LOR's job is, now that their partner has picked what argument you're going for, you need to start guessing what are they going to go for. And you need to preemptively address that. So what you do is, and Tristan actually, I wish you folks had been here yesterday, because Tristan did a pretty good job of this in his LOR. Tristan was like, on this position, there are 3 things they will say. First, they'll say blah, 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 blah. Here's why that's wrong. Second, they will say blah, 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 blah. Here's why that's wrong. And so on and so forth. The LOR, what makes this speech look really good, gets you a lot of speaker points. We're going to talk about what that means in a second, is when you say, I'm calling it right now, Ethan in the next speech is going for advantage 1. This is the 3 things they're going to say to you. Here's my answer to those 3 things. And then Ethan stands up and goes, so I'm going for advantage 1. It's going to be the 3 things they said. Because the judge is like, this kid knows their shit. They thought strategically, they were ahead of the game. So you preempt and then you weigh. If your partner didn't do much weighing, you definitely need weighing in this stock speech. You definitely need the word magnitude, probability, time frame, reversibility, sequencing. So one of those words, hopefully minimum 2, must appear in your rebuttal. You preempt, you weigh. PMR. What is the benefit of the PMR? We said the MO has a big benefit in that it's the last constructive. What's the PMR's benefit? What?
Like the last word?
Nothing's coming after this speech. So you know, not only do you know every argument that's in the debate, you know which one they actually went for. So if they went for disadvantage 1, how much time do you need to spend on disadvantage 2 in the PMR? 0 seconds. That's how we rectify the fact that they get 12 minutes. You know what they went for. So just talk about the things they actually went for. What does the PMR do? Answer, resolve, weigh. Now that's a new term I put in there, resolve. Resolve could also probably be fit into here, but it matters less when you're new. But let me talk about that, resolve. There's a difference between answering and resolving arguments. Answering is like, they said this, I say this, whatever. Like you have ink next to their ink. But resolving is, Figuring out, and this is, I don't know how to say anything well, what Tristan did especially well yesterday is you have to ask yourself, what questions do I think the judge is going to be thinking of when they're making their decision? What questions do they have to answer at the end of this debate to vote for me? Okay, the first question is, do we have access to advantage number 1? Yes, we do. Here is why. They said this, but that doesn't respond to this, blah, 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 blah. That is resolving the argument, right? There are competing claims going on. Here's why mine comes out ahead. A lot of debaters, when they're novices, and I don't expect any of you to really do this just yet, if all you do is answer everything they said, we're probably going to win most of our debates anyway. But at that next level, when you really get to like high level varsity, which is forever away for you folks, every single argument is answered. Both teams answer every single argument. So who wins the debate? The team that can explain why their portion of that debate, that mini debate within the debate, is resolved in their favor. Okay? And then we wait, same thing. PMR, if there's one speech in the debate that must weigh or instantly lose the round, it is the PMR. If you are the PMR and you don't weigh, you lose, that's it. Almost every judge thinks that way. If you do not weigh in the PMR, you will lose the debate. What's the simplest way to weigh if you don't want to worry about all those big, the magnitude, probability? This is a silly, old school, hacky thing, but you do what you got to do. Two worlds analysis. Judge, at the end of this debate, there's two worlds. The world of the affirmative, where we do the plan, and the world of the negative, where we do nothing. In the world of the affirmative, good, 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 good. In the world of the negative, bad, 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 right? Like, it's just like that. Like, if that helps you think of it. I'm going to add one last dimension to this, because this is already going longer than I wanted to. The way I conceptualize these speeches is, in debate, there are two kinds of speeches. There are strategic, decision-making speeches, and there are skill word speeches. What do I mean by that? I hate using sports metaphors because half my students don't watch any sports at all. But let's pretend for 5 seconds you are vaguely aware that American football exists. In American football, the quarterback is a strategic decision maker. As in, they have to know all the plays, all the different options, they have to make choices and think about what to do. On any given play, there's 3-4 people they could throw the ball to, but their job is, given that option, which one do I pick? On the other end, there's wide receivers. And wide receivers need to know the play, but really, they only need to know their part of the play. And all that really matters is, can you run really fast? Can you jump really high, or catch the ball really quickly, or whatever you need to do. Skill work. They're not thinking, right? They're not solving the equation in their head. They're just really technically sufficient. Some speeches in debate are for making choices, making decisions, and don't require you to be very technical at all. They require you to be strategic. Some speeches are the opposite. It's about shock and awe almost. So to break that down for you really quickly. I don't even know what, this one doesn't even matter. You just read a script, right? This is skill work. This is skill work. This is decision making. This is kind of both. And this is decision making. As a result of this, typically speaking, who's the fastest debater in the debate? What speeches do you think have the fastest debaters in them? Any guesses? This one and this one. Because their job's not to think. It's to make the other person's job really hard. And this is the very last thing I want to talk about. These two people have a secret job. Okay? They have a secret job that if they're good at, when you're new, and even when you're good, makes it almost impossible for the other team to win. And it's what I call building the wall. Which is similar to a concept you may have heard of called shock and awe. You know what shock and awe is? Like, as a military strategist, you've never heard of shock and awe? Shock and awe is like, okay, we're going to like some village. We're literally just gonna have a bunch of jets go by, drop bombs, blow the shit out of them, like way, like disproportional levels of what was necessary to defeat them. Why? So that the enemy goes, holy shit. Bro, we can't beat these guys. Like, how can we possibly? They have jets. What? Like, what are we supposed to do? Whatever, right? When I say build the wall, what I mean is the MG's job and the LO's job is to convince the person who's speaking after them that the debate is already over and it is impossible for them to win. And the way they usually do that in high-level debates, which again, not where we are, is because they're so fast and can read so many arguments, it's literally like there's a wall. There is a wall of paper of 3 disadvantages, 2 topicalities, 1 criticism. Like there was a debate that Tristan, not this Tristan, the one who's the national champion, is starting to come to our practices next week. They did a debate this year where they were the MG, and Tristan's like the best MG in the country and arguably of all time now that they've won 4 national championships. But the opponent stood up in this speech, and do you know how many sheets of paper they said it was going to be? 10. It says to be 10 off. Right? And why did they do that? Shock and awe. They were trying to like overwhelm Tristan to the point where like, oh my god, there's nothing I can do about it. But Tristan was way better than them, so she went even slower than they did in their speech, but it was just fine. But the bottom line is, against most people, debate's over. Because they just can't hang. They can't keep up. They're being skill checked. It's not that you're not smart enough. It's that you don't have the technical ability to even hang. Your flowing's not good enough. Your ear's not good enough. Your speed's not good enough. You have no chance of beating them. And that is how teams that aren't actually very good, but who are like, there's a word called sandbagging, where like you're good, but you go in the bad division because you're a coward and afraid to debate good people. Like that's what those people do. They're like, well, I'm just more technical than you. I'm doing this thing you've never heard of, so you lose. And it's like, oh, great, you're so good at debate. So that was a very long answer to your question. That's what each of those speeches do. But the real way, if you want to simplify all this, is you should just be asking yourself, what speeches does someone need to make a decision in, and in what speech do they just need to make more arguments? More arguments, make a decision, make a decision. Questions? Boom, turn it off, quick, turn it off, down the camera. Whoa, 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 whoa.